Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream Public Media are made possible by PNC and the United Black Fund of Greater Cleveland, Incorporated.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the City Club of Cleveland, where we are devoted to conversations of consequence that help democracy thrive. It's Friday, June 28th, and I'm Ariana Smith, Educational Engagement Manager here at the City Club of Cleveland, and honored to introduce today's forum, which is a part of the City Club's Criminal Justice Series, as well as our Local Hero Series. For the last several years, our Local Hero Series has spotlighted champions here in Northeast Ohio whose hard work changes the way we view ourselves and our community. Today, I am personally excited to introduce to you all a woman who embodies the definition of hero, advocate, and leader. Myesha Watkins has been undertaking some of the most challenging work facing our neighborhoods as the Executive Director of the Cleveland Peacemakers Alliance, which is an independent, neighborhood-based organization dedicated to maintaining peace and keeping young people out of gangs. Through grassroots efforts, the organization utilizes community violence intervention, targeting individuals ages 14 through ages 24 who face the highest risk of being involved in gun violence. The organization provides a range of services, including court advocacy, hospital-based programs, employment opportunities, mental health services, and more. Many in the room and listening to us today may know Myesha as a licensed social worker, youth development professional, violence prevention expert, and close friend. However, she is also a loving daughter, a dynamic friend, a caring sister, and an incredible mother to two beautiful girls, Elle and Corey. In the words of her favorite rapper, Jay-Z, I believe excellence is being able to perform at a high level over and over. Now, I don't know who he had in mind when he said those words originally, but I think there is no truer statement that embodies just how Myesha shows up in every area of her life, and in the way that she is intentional about making an impact in her community. Myesha, I'm proud to call you my soror and my friend. In 2021, Myesha was selected to participate in Mayor-elect Justin Bibb's transition team and Public Safety Committee. Then, in 2022, she was invited to the White House and recognized for her work in violence prevention by President Joe Biden. Earlier this year, she was invited back to the White House after she graduated from the inaugural cohort of the University of Chicago Crime Lab's Community Violence Intervention Leadership Academy. For the record, this was the first graduation to ever be held at the White House, and of course, Myesha was selected by her peers to be one of the speakers at that graduation. Today's conversation could not be more important. When just this past weekend, there was a local shooting here at Edgewater Park, which resulted in an 18-year-old man being left wounded. In addition, there were 16 people that were discovered to have guns that night. Ironically, just 3 days later, the U.S. Surgeon General declared that gun violence was a public health crisis. In addition, Attorney General Merrick Garland, Director Stephen Dettelbach of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, and U.S. Attorney Rebecca Lutzko from the Northern District of Ohio were in Cleveland for the opening of the new Northeast Ohio Crime Gun Intelligence Center this week. This center will allow law enforcement to rapidly analyze and compare crime evidence, scene evidence against the national database, expediting the identification and apprehension of violent criminals. Today, we will hear from Myesha about how her work aims to de-escalate conflicts before they turn fatal in order to build healthier and safer communities. If you have questions for our speaker today, you can text it to 330-541-5794. Again, that's 330-541-5794, and the City Club staff will try to work into the second half of our program. Members and friends of the City Club, please join me in welcoming Myesha Watkins.
I feel really tall up here. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. I feel like we're family now. My name is Myesha Watkins, and I am a proud native of Cleveland, Ohio. My life has taken me all over this great city, so much so that I do not have a single neighborhood that defines me. However, My best years were spent up and down St. Clair Avenue with a special connection to Eddy Road. I am a proud graduate of Cleveland Metropolitan School District and Cleveland State University, where I earned my bachelor's and master's degree in social work. I am a devoted daughter to Debbie and Melvin. Above all, I am a proud mother of my beautiful daughters, Elle and Corey. Now that you know a little bit about me, let's get into why we are gathered here today on this beautiful Friday. It's not for a marriage ceremony, because that's definitely what it sounds like. We are here to gain a deeper understanding of what a community-based approach to violence prevention looks like and how you can play a crucial role in ending gun violence. Thank you for joining me on this journey today, and let's get into it. It's an absolute honor to stand before you today. Over a year ago, I was sitting in a forum similar to this, listening to the words of Jasmine Long, the Executive Director of Birth and Beautiful Communities. As I listened to her speak, I felt a deep desire to one day share the impact of gun violence in our communities and discuss strategies and solutions. Today, the aspiration has become a reality, and I am truly grateful for this opportunity. Firstly, I would like to extend a heartfelt thanks to the City Club of Cleveland for inviting me to speak. I also want to acknowledge our funders, community partners, and stakeholders who support the work of Cleveland Peacemakers. To the survivors of gun violence and those who have lost loved ones, I offer my deepest condolences and solidarity. I am profoundly grateful to my incredible team at Cleveland Peacemakers. Your trust in me as your leader means the world. I would like to recognize the staff that are here and those who are not. Monique Rich, Mariam Patterson, Andre Taylor, Myron Phillips, and Vincent Evans. Can you please stand? Thank you for your efforts in ensuring that those who are at the highest risk of shooting or being shot have mentorship and resources to live a life, to be alive and free. Earlier this week, my work hit home in a most tragic way. I received the devastating news that my 25-year-old cousin, Mandrell Hall Jr., had been murdered. Instinctively, I turned to my work. I messaged my team, and we all gathered at the hospital to do what we do to intervene and support. It wasn't until the next day that the reality sunk in that the reality of my loss truly sank in. My work and my personal life had collided in the most painful way. Today, I stand in front of you as someone who speaks not from someone who doesn't just speak from the experience of others, but as a cousin surviving the loss of my younger cousin to gun violence. I ask you to bow your heads and join me in a moment of silence for the life of Mandrell Hall Jr., who left this world on Monday, June 24th, due to a homicide. In honor of my cousin's life, we also honor those who have lost loved ones to community violence, firearm violence, or suicide by firearm. My heart is with you all. I want to take a moment to reflect on our work. Our work is not just a job, it's our lives. It's about the people we love and the communities we protect. The work of Cleveland Peacemakers is essential because it addresses the root causes of violence and provides real solutions. But it also reminds us of the importance of resilience, empathy, and unwavering commitment to our community. Cleveland Peacemakers is a community violence intervention organization, and I am honored to serve as the third executive director. We are a grassroots organization working with individuals at the highest risk of shooting or being shot to provide life-saving interventions, resources, and mentoring to prevent fatalities and incarceration. Unfortunately, many people don't understand what success looks like in our work because they focus on bloodshed rather than the life-affirming and life-saving contributions we make. When people ask about our work, they'll say, but people are still dying. And I'll look them in the eyes and say, you're absolutely right. There is no single program that can solve the problem of this magnitude. Gun violence in our country is a disease. Addressing it requires systemic change. One of the ongoing discussions in our work involves the relationship with law enforcement. From the community's perspective, collaborating with law enforcement can often endanger the lives of those working within the community. It can damage their credibility and ultimately erode the trust and relationships we have built with individuals striving to change their lives and live safely. Law enforcement, on the other hand, frequently hesitates to work with individuals who have been system impacted or those they perceive as uneducated. There are likely other reasons, but I am not a law enforcement officer. I can only speculate. However, significant efforts have been made to build a professional bridge and foster mutual understanding. The goal is to collaborate in a way that does not jeopardize the credibility or safety of community workers, while addressing the biases that law enforcement may have against partnering with skilled individuals who has a proven track record of interrupting violence and saving lives. We need to set aside personal differences and develop protocols that allow us to work together effectively. By clearly defining our receptive roles and responsibilities, we can complement each other's work efforts to create a safer Cleveland. This collaborative approach is already happening in other cities across the country. Those cities have perfected the relationship between community violence intervention organizations and law enforcement. They have seen a significant reduction in gun violence. One example is Detroit, Michigan, which is just a short distance from here. Imagine a Cleveland where law enforcement and community violence intervention organizations can work together, fully understanding their scopes, roles, and responsibilities. By doing so, we can avoid asking anything from one another that might further harm the trust within a community. Let's strive for this level of collaboration and create a safer Cleveland for everyone. Just this week, the U.S. Surgeon General released a statement declaring gun violence a public health crisis. He emphasized the need to shift the conversation from a political issue to a public health issue. This is similar to how we once addressed the widespread issue of people driving without seatbelts. By recognizing it as a public health concern, we implemented changes that saved countless lives. Now, if we apply the same approach to community gun violence, would our responses change? What language would we use? What efforts will we undertake? What level of investment will we make if we truly recognize gun violence as a public health crisis, rather than a problem that's affecting certain people, races, groups, or cities? Consider this. Gun violence is the leading cause of premature death for all children and teens in our country. How does that make you feel? Look around this room and see the faces of all of these children, including my daughters. Knowing that their lives could end due to a preventable issue like gun violence is a harsh reality. Black children and teens in Ohio are 7 times more likely than their white peers to die by guns. Community violence intervention is a term to describe the work people have been doing in their communities for far too long, and oftentimes without funding. I stand on the shoulders of those who have carried out this work with sweat equity, credibility, tears in their eyes, trauma in their hearts, and a commitment to say, if I once contributed to the destruction of this community, it is my responsibility to restore it. Shout out to Vinny. Many specialists in this movement often say, I would do this for free. However, our language has evolved. This is community work and not community service. Individuals working for Cleveland Peacemakers and similar organizations across this country risk their lives and dedicate their time, oftentimes sacrificing their families to ensure that those who are at the highest risk of shooting or being shot can be free. They do this work with incredible passion, but passion alone is not enough. It is time for the city, state, and country to financially support the efforts that have been carried out for free for so many years. I want to acknowledge a few of the incredible individuals and organizations who have dedicated their lives to interrupting violence in Cleveland communities. Cleveland Peacemakers, James Box, Khalid Samad, Art McCoy, Carlos Williams, Mike Walker, New Era Cleveland, Charles C., Fred Ward, Hank Davis, Black on Black Crime, Brenda Glass, Guardian Angels, Grady Stevenson, Children at Play, Councilman Richard Starr, Renounce, Denounce, and Ghetto Therapy, and many more. I stand on your shoulders, and I deeply respect the work that you do. To those I haven't mentioned, thank you for all that you do to create safer communities. I am grateful for the leadership of the Biden-Harris administration, which has taken significant steps to address this issue. For the first time in 30 years, they passed the bipartisan Safer Communities Act, investing in cities, states, and programs like Cleveland Peacemakers to continue this work nationwide. They also created the first ever White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention, led by 2 survivors of gun violence. The Bipartisan SAFER Act, the first significant gun safety law to pass in nearly 30 years, made $15 billion available for violence prevention. Again, gun violence is the leading cause of premature death for children and teens in our nation. Since 2006, it has been the #1 cause of premature death for Black men and boys. Gun violence has always been critical, often overlooked because of who is most affected. Now it is finally being acknowledged and addressed at the highest levels of government. Locally, Mayor Bibb administration has launched the Neighborhood Safety Fund, a $10 million initiative housed at the Cleveland Foundation, established in July 2023 with the ARPA funds from the city. This fund aims to support programs and organizations targeting the root causes of gun violence, particularly among young people. It is time that our work receive the investment it deserves, and I am thankful for the leadership that is making it possible. As I stand here today, it is crucial for me to raise awareness, education, and to create opportunities for partnership. So let me share this in my own way, and I can only do it this way. Have you ever been to a barbecue? That's the time, yep, okay. You know, the kind where you are excited. There are so many options, like your favorite sides, drinks, and great music. Everything creates the atmosphere of possibilities and choices. Think of a barbecue as an ecosystem. In an ecosystem, it's not just people with the same perspective. Just like at a barbecue, it's not everyone bringing the same dish. At a barbecue, everyone brings something different, like cheesy, gooey macaroni and cheese with the perfection of a crisp top. You know, I'm hungry. Similar to our work to reduce community violence, we need diverse perspectives. Each person, whether they come from community, hospitals, courts, schools, returning citizens who have been system impacted, local government, county government, federal government, children and victims and perpetrators of gun violence, we all bring something unique to the table. Together, we can create a vibrant, supportive community like a barbecue. The ecosystem we need in Cleveland involves diverse perspectives, all focus on eradicating community violence, particularly gun violence. What would it look like if we all donated our time? Do you have people in your systems or organizations who have been impacted by community violence? Have we included survivors of gun violence or those who have lost loved ones? What we need to think about our humanity and ask ourselves, how can I help? Who should I call? What do I need to support? Who do I lift up? How do I communicate and collaborate? My call to action for you is to conduct a self-inventory. Reflect on your organization, your role, your network, your heart, your love for those who you serve or who you would like to serve. What can you do to ensure that not another life is lost to gun violence? I want to hear from you. I'm going to share my phone number, and you can email me and let me know what your thoughts are. Let's create an incredible barbecue, our ecosystem, where Cleveland and neighboring communities come together to say that even one life lost to gun violence is too many. What will you do, and when will you do it? Despite the state's gun homicide rate increasing over the past decade, higher than the nationwide increase, lawmakers recently passed a dangerous shoot-first law encouraging violence in public and eliminated the requirement that a person get a permit and safety training before carrying a concealed weapon in public. Lawmakers also recently passed a dangerous law which allows K-12 school teachers to, schools to arm teachers. I understand how much professionals appreciate data, so let me share some key statistics with you. For those interested in exploring further, I have printouts available for a more in-depth look. As survivors, families, communities, employers, and taxpayers, we all pay an enormous cost associated with the violence, whether we own a gun or not. The daily toll is staggering. So I don't know if y'all want to take out y'all pen and paper. But taxpayers, survivors, families, and employers pay an average of $7.79 million daily in health care costs, including immediate and long-term medical and mental health care. American taxpayers pay $30.16 million every day in police and criminal justice costs for investigation, prosecution, and incarceration. Employers lose an average of $1.47 million on a daily basis in productivity, revenue, and costs required to recruit, train, and replace victims of gun violence. Society loses $1.34 billion daily in the quality of life costs. Gun violence in Ohio versus the national. Are y'all ready for this? So in Ohio, 177 children and teens die by guns every day. Nationally, 4,094. In Ohio, 31% of all gun deaths among children and teens are suicides. And the nation is 31% also. 65% of all gun deaths among children and teens are homicides in Ohio. 63% are nationally. Gun violence costs Ohio $22.3 billion each year, of which, if you're a taxpayer, raise your hand. You pay your taxes? You better pay your taxes. Which taxpayers pay $493.7 million. So when you think about gun violence, whether you're directly or indirectly impacted, this is a problem for all of us. Oftentimes people believe that this is not their problem because gun violence have yet hit their community or their lives, but we all pay for the disease of violence in our country. Therefore, we all have a responsibility to show up. In an average year, gun violence costs America $557 billion. 40,000 people are killed each year by guns, and 40,000 more are wounded. So a little bit more math. Y'all ready for more math? So $557 billion in gun violence costs, $2.8 billion in medical costs, $53.8 billion in work loss costs, $11 billion in police and criminal costs, $2.5 billion in employer costs, $489.1 billion in quality of life costs. If we have not been responding to violence, what could we have done with $557 billion in our country? Do y'all know? I know. I got some outfits that I'll buy. Okay, so as I close, a public health approach to gun violence is a comprehensive, multidisciplinary strategy that brings together institutions and experts across various fields. So this is an ecosystem. To develop evidence-based interventions. This approach has been successfully used to address other public health crises, such as polio, smoking-related deaths, and car safety. And it has the potential to significantly reduce gun violence by addressing its root causes. So I'm gonna give you 4 things. You can either voice record, use your notes, write it down, or take a picture. So 1, we're gonna define and monitor the problem. So we'll collect reliable data on gun violence. We'll utilize standardized definitions. We'll ensure that data is open to the public with transparency and awareness. 2, we'll identify the risks and protective factors. So recognize individual risk factors. And you can think about yourself when I'm listing this off. The access to firearms, the history of violence, and the substance abuse. That's for the individual. As we address the community level factors, poverty, lack of economic opportunities, and structural racism. As I read that off, you're probably thinking about a few communities in the city of Cleveland. Promote protective factors, job training, educational opportunities, and mental health support. So we have Cleveland Peacemakers, we have New Era Cleveland, we have Renounce Denounce, we have research with Dr. Sarah Sweeney, we have Dr. Ho, we have the Trauma Center, we have Idea Stream. We have all of these different people that are gathered in this room, in addition to the mayor's office, that are trying to work together collectively to figure out how can we all address those risk factors and those protective factors. The third one, to develop and test prevention strategies. Implement universal background checks and firearm license. Create targeted interventions for high-risk individuals and communities. And invest in community-based violence intervention programs to de-escalate conflicts and provide support. The last one, ensure widespread adoption of effective strategies. Enforce and implement strong gun violence prevention laws. Involve historically disenfranchised groups in the process to prevent unintended consequences, and allocate funds for training and evaluation of policies and programs. So here's my call of action. I feel like a teacher. So recognize gun violence as a public health crisis. Support and advocate for data collection and research. Promote and participate in community-based interventions. Encourage policymakers to implement and enforce comprehensive gun violence prevention laws, and address the root causes of violence through a social and economic policies. Thank you for being here today. I look forward to you all being a part of the ecosystem as we gain a better understanding of what a community-based approach to violence prevention looks like. Thank you.
I mean, wow. Okay. So we are about to begin the audience Q&A. For our live stream and radio audience, or those just joining, I'm Ariana Smith, Educational Engagement Manager here at the City Club of Cleveland. Today we are joined by Myesha Watkins, Executive Director of the Cleveland Peacemakers Alliance, as a part of City Club's Criminal Justice and Local Heroes series. We welcome questions from everyone, City Club members, guests, students, and those joining us via our live stream at cityclub.org or radio broadcast at 89.7 WKSU, Idea Stream Public Media. If you would like to text a question for our speaker, please text it to 330-541-5794. Again, that's 330-541-5794, and the City Club staff will try to work it into the program. May we have our first question, please?
Good afternoon. Thank you for sharing all that information. It's heavy, and I appreciate your courage in this work. I think about resource allocation. You know, we're in the 30th anniversary of the 1994 crime bill. It's $20 billion for community and police, $10 billion for the prison industrial complex. The $20 billion dried up. The $10 billion got invested to buy our entire legislative bodies so that they can continue building out the prison industrial complex. I guess what we need is a violence intervention industrial complex. And how do we structure this in a way where our elected officials are inspired by their lobbying money to serve us? Thank you.
Thank you so much for that question. That's a really great question. When we think about investment, oftentimes the greater community think about law enforcement as the only route to public safety. And with our approach, it's like, how do we put the public back into safety? How do we empower people like in this room who are doing work to keep people safe that does not always make the headlines? How do we invest in them for prolonging the lives of people who could have lost their lives to fatalities, to street gangs, or any other barrier that's put against them? I think how we get law policymakers and council people and city government, county government more engaged is that we have to start collaborating more on a ground level to show up united as a front. And too often, it has been a competitive spirit because it hasn't been enough money for us all to do work. Therefore, we compete against one another. Until we all come together and create that barbecue-like ecosystem, they're going to continue to find gaps in the work that we do because they don't find unity. So the call of action to organizations in this room that has a historical context of competing, we have to collaborate and show something strong and united to our city, local, state, and county officials to say that we can do the work that we've always been doing, and we're going to come back stronger and get paid to do it. So I think that that's the way.
So thank you. My question is, well, we've got a non-police care response pilot program starting up in the city this year in 2 zip codes, and it's focused on non-police response for behavioral mental health, sending a clinician, social worker, and a peer responder. How do you see the work that you all are doing in Renounce, Denounce, like fitting in or intersecting with that work? Because it's not exactly the same work for sure, but it's about removing police from the equation to some degree and reducing the need for police activity. So I'm wondering how you see those as pieces of a puzzle, perhaps?
Absolutely. There are so many opportunities. One thing that I can share is that Cuyahoga County is one of the most well-resourced counties in the country. And we don't have a shortage in programs or innovation. But what we do have a problem with is collaborations, hence the reason why we work in silos. If there's one problem, know that there is 25 programs that's addressing that problem. And if working together, we can create a larger footprint and impact. So I think what needs to happen is when we think about this ecosystem, to think about who's working in intervention, prevention, and restorative services, so that just because we can do it all doesn't mean that we should. What is something that you do well, that you know, if Renounce, Denounce is focusing on gang involvement and getting people who are in gangs to denounce their affiliation, I don't need to do it. Even if I can, I don't need to. So how do we identify, similar to what I spoke about law enforcement, identify scopes, roles, and responsibilities for us all to work together in a collaborative space so that we can serve more people and save more lives? I think that you should invite a conversation with New Era Cleveland, Cleveland Peacemakers, and Renounce, Denounce to be the start of how do we create a co-responding model where we can use less of law enforcement so they can do what they need to do, and then we can do what we need to do as community organizations.
Hi, Myesha. Hi. I'm Joan Spurl, you know that, Director of Dolly Parton's Imagination Library at the Literacy Cooperative. And I'm also president of the University of Chicago Alumni of Ohio. So I have a 2-part question. One is, what do you see is the role of investing in the children in the earliest years through programs like Imagination Library? And if you have a story to share about your own children, go ahead. Secondly, I'm just curious, what was your greatest lesson or learning that you took from the U Chicago Crime Lab? Like, what did you learn about that maybe we are doing here locally, or what we aren't doing that we could do for greater impact?
Thank you so much. Leave it to the teacher to give me 30 questions in one. So first, the importance of literacy. We know that Cleveland has a literacy gap, and in some areas there are kids that are not reading at grade level, particularly in Councilman Rich's Star area where he is working hard to improve the literacy gap. I do have a story as it relates to how education can, and with young people, can help support the work that we're doing in communities. There was a shooting in Ward 5, and our team was there at the scene, and there was a group of kids that was walking around looking at the body that was still left under the white sheet in the community. And my team went and grabbed a football to engage in a distraction activity with a young person so that they're not constantly looking at a reminder of what continues to happen in their community. So investing in young people in reading, I think we had a conversation about what would it look like to have a mobile RV pull up to scenes where shots are fired and engage those young people in reading and play, while people who are responding to violence are able to support the community around them to reduce the chances of further retaliation or further harm. So I think that there's an opportunity for you and your organization to do that. Again, creating an ecosystem. I don't know if you want to be the macaroni, maybe you can be the ribs with great barbecue sauce, it's up to you. As it relates to my children, as I shared, Cuyahoga County is one of the most well-resourced counties in the country. My daughter, Corey, participated in the Imagination Station, and we have books delivered to our house every month. And because of that opportunity to read and engage with my daughter, she is now in a gifted program for reading. So I thank you for sharing that opportunity, because it started with a free book. Maybe I didn't take her to the library often, but I knew every month a book was coming to our house to engage in her reading. The program at the University of Chicago, the first inaugural cohort, it was 31 people from 21 states, and I was a part of it. And how it has helped me is that if I ever have a problem that I feel is too big, I have 30 other people from different cities and states across the country that are working on the same problem. So instead of asking Google to help me with something, I can call someone from Detroit or DC or Houston or California to say, please send it to me now, I need help, or please come to our city and provide a free training based on our cohort education so that Cleveland can get closer to where I know we can be. So that's what I would say. Cleveland we have all the pieces to do everything right. We just gotta let the historical trauma that brought us apart allow the data point that kids are dying from gun violence be the reason that we come together.
Hello, my name is Isaiah McLean. My question is kind of about how we're gonna influence kids who are actually pulling these triggers. So right now we know there's a lot of young children who are being killed, but there are also children who are killing because they feel like they have no other option and they don't want to listen to adults who are trying to stop them. So what is your plan to try to help these kids and get them from going through the wrong path?
Yeah, thank you for that question. That's a great question. So I think at a community level, what our plan is and what it has been for many, many years is to build relationships with young people who feel like violence is their only option. Young people who may not be violent or criminal, but afraid, right? If you live in a community where violence is high and you hear shots fired every night and every street pole you walk by has a balloon or a teddy bear or a bottle, and the gas station that you go to for your grocery store or to hang out or meet your friends is also a hotspot for violence, you're saying, well, I'd rather get caught with a gun than without one. And that's not the mindset to have. So the importance that my team, Renounce, Denounce, and New Era Cleveland spend hours and hours with one person to get them to change their life, to put down the gun, but it's oftentimes overlooked because the headline still reads that there was a shooting at Edgewater. But on the back end, there could have been shootings at Edgewater had it not been for these men who are tirelessly and relentlessly having conversations with people who have guns on them and with them in conversations and will oftentimes threaten them if they don't back up. But the reality is they continue to show up so that the lives are prolonged and people are really putting down their guns. I had a staff member text me, Myesha, I'm supposed to be here today, but I have a graduation of our participant who is a shooter and he's graduating from high school. What should I do? Why would you ask me that question? Go support this participant. So we have a person who now success looks like, I put down a gun, I'm graduating from high school, and I want to know what's next. But if it had not been for that relationship, we would have had one more headline that read whatever the headlines read. So I think to answer your questions, it's about investing in people who have the relationships to change the hearts and minds of people who live in communities that's impacted by violence, where they feel like they have no choice, and create that choice.
I have a question about how do you respond to quote-unquote failures in your field of work and the need for actual long-term investment in data and metrics? When you're seeing this surge in funding, usually we see funding and people are excited about it, but they're not willing to commit to that long-term result that we're looking for. But we see that in policing. We've had this experiment for a long time that has not led to really viable outcomes for certain communities when it comes to this violence. So how do you respond to those failures and that need for long-term investment?
Yeah, so like I'm in rooms with conversations like that often. And what I try to do at this bigger age, because when I first started 5 years ago, I was flipping tables over and yelling at everybody, but I've matured. I even got a crease in my pants. But what I would say is that in this work, there's no failures, but the lack of investment can lead to death. And because of that, that's a responsibility that we all have to take. When I'm in the rooms with people, I often look for ways to call them in and not call them out, but hold them accountable. A lot of people want to invest for near-term results for a problem that went as far back as I can remember, and even before that. So in having conversations, the issue is like, I need reliable funding and I need sustainability. So if you want to invest in one staff member to meet with 6 people twice, I don't want that. So sometimes you have to turn money away because people don't see the investment of people long-term, but they want to create something where they can check it off and say, I did invest in a focus group, but nothing changed. Like, what do you expect to change? So you have to be able to articulate the vision, and you got to hope that you can pull on the heartstrings of some people. But I will be honest, Black people and kids dying don't always do it for people. And no matter how sad it is. So you see I read numbers, what's the bottom line? What's the return on investment? And it's unfortunate that we oftentimes have to speak that way, but people want to know, if I'm investing in your program for $1 million, what would that give me? Well, a homicide costs $1 million in the city of Cleveland, so even if I save one life, you got your return on investment. What's up? So that's how I kind of had a conversation.
Where are you showing up? Under what circumstances? To whom are you speaking? And what are you saying and doing? Thank you.
Oh, you think that's basic? That's a real question. You got to take me to lunch for that question. So I have a staff of 6 people, and unfortunately, we can't be everywhere all the time. But the cool thing is that there's other groups and spaces where we're not. And if we did a great job at tracking data and working together on the ground, we will be able to identify in which wards and which communities and which services we are providing to those communities that are impacted and to those families who have survived the loss. What I can say, our work shows up in, I would call my staff up. What I would say is that our work shows up in courts, in hospitals, in schools, and in communities. When we are alerted, either by the community or by the community relation board that somebody is shot, we deploy to that scene where shots is fired. In that moment, what we're trying to do is to de-escalate and calm down the community, to limit gossip spreading, and then to also support the family of the victim. Then we also deploy to the hospital to ensure that the most heightened emotions are lessened and that we support the family there. There are situations where we will do community cleanups in different wards. We will partner with council people if they call, but we do not have the capacity to be everywhere all the time. But what we have been really great at is collaborating with organizations to increase their reach. New Era Cleveland just had a Juneteenth event. Because we don't need to host one, because they do, we just supported their event and showed up. So it's on the ground partnership to show up in different ways. If their message is love and our message is intervention, we can do love and intervention together and share that data to say, not only did we engage 20 people, but we engaged 200 people with the partnership of collaboration. One more thing, so we show up for victims of gun violence, perpetrators of gun violence, their families, the community. There's a lot of people that do positive loitering in places that people don't want them to be. And we come with resources, engage them where they at, and then hopefully move them into something where they feel a lot more safer and that can limit their interactions with law enforcement. Did I answer? If not, I like Panera Bread. Feel free.
Good afternoon. My name is Greg Johnson, and I was asked, a number of people here know me already, I'm a troublemaker, but you're giving an outstanding presentation, and I applaud you. I was asked a few months ago, and Dan knows this, I was asked by the United Nations to open a chapter here in Cleveland, and for the domestic arm, where there's 200 chapters throughout the United States. My question, though, I have a question and a statement, all right? Is peace possible here? That's my question. Okay, don't answer it yet, okay? I'm going to give some information, and I hope everyone hears this. Cleveland is listed. There's a listing titled International Cities of Peace. Ready for this? Cleveland is listed on, is among those that's listed on the listing. If you look it up, everyone's got their little computers or whatever. Look it up. International Cities of Peace. We're listed. There are 405 cities listed. We are listed, amazingly, you know, taking into account the data that you gave, we're listed as 401. Now, that doesn't get you excited, I'm sure. However, there's another city on the list that's number 1, and it's also from Ohio. Obviously, it's not Cleveland. I'm not going to tell you who it is because I want you to look it up on your own to do your work, all right? But we're 401. There's the number 1 city in the world for international cities of peace is in Ohio. Okay. We have a lot of work to do. I'm complete.
Thank you. As a peacemaker, I absolutely do believe that peace is possible, but it depends on through what lens are you looking at peace. Peace looks different for every person. So if you ask yourself, what does peace look like for me, then I think we'll be closer to what peace can look like for all of us. I can go into a space and say, no justice, no peace. And somebody else is saying, what you mean? We handled it. That's not what I'm talking about. So we have to be able to look, to have conversation to see what lens are you looking at peace through to be able to get closer to a community of peace. Because if there's no alignment and we look at peace differently, then we're going to continue to butt heads and we'll spend more time arguing that it's possible or not possible, and while we're doing that, people are dying. So we really got to try to figure out, there's multi-lenses that we can look at through violence prevention, through peace, and through anything. People look at love differently too. Somebody will tell you they love you and you'll be like, that ain't love, but it's love to them. So ask yourself, through what lens am I looking at peace through? And then do everything in your power to get closer to allowing us to climb up, because now we're collectively working together to create a collective action and impact. But I do believe that it's possible. I mean, 400 slot, we got it, we can do it. I mean, this is a start. We can do it here. I'm hopeful. Peace can be a lifestyle. Okay.
Hi, Ms. Myesha. I'm Celeste. I'm with Youth Opportunities Unlimited, and I work in the classroom during the school year every day, and I've had the privilege of having you and Mr. Vincent in my classroom. And in May of this year, the Cleveland Plain Dealer had a series of articles titled Delinquent, and in that article, they talk about how Cuyahoga County sends more youth to adult detention centers than any county in Ohio. And I have kind of 2 questions, so I apologize. One is, has Cleveland Peacemakers or other, peacemaking alliances talked with the mayor's office with regard to getting the Cleveland Peacemakers into those juvenile detention centers in order to decrease recidivism with our youth? And two, what is, in your opinion, if we're thinking at the youth level, what is the most powerful way that we can impact our youth from an adult perspective? I don't know if that's clear enough.
No, you're good. That's
All right,
great.
thank you.
Thank you, and it's good seeing you again. The bind over rate in Cuyahoga County is sickening. There are several groups that are doing work behind the walls. One of them being New Era Cleveland, who just did a rites of passage group and continues to do that. I think their first graduation was like 17 people or so shout out to them. I will also say that Cleveland Peacemakers are also doing work behind the wall. Vinny went in every week, twice a week, 5 days, my bad, shout out to you, 5 days a week. See, that's why I got a team. 5 days a week to talk to young people ages 14, help me out. 14 to 17, and I had the pleasure of going in there one day, and I was talking to them, and they were mostly young people who have had guns, and one person said, the reason why I decided to shoot is because somebody killed my brother. That was his way of honoring his brother's life, which was really unfortunate, but what Vinny said, and he oftentimes says, is, who would you die for? And I'm just saying that to you all, who would you die for? You don't have to answer. What would it look like to live for those same people? And what would it take? So we have people that are doing work behind the wall. At a city level, the Community Relations Board is also working with young people behind the wall to help slow down recidivism and then connect them to community serving programs this way. As it relates to talking to the mayor about that problem, Cuyahoga County is the level of government that we'll talk to, and we have been, and for the first time, Juvenile Detention Court have money to pay organizations for doing this work, and Cleveland Peacemakers have been finally selected as one of those organizations to be paid to mentor young people to slow down the chances of recidivism and violations. And I will tell you that sometimes working on the side of community and working with probation officers, it can be like this, because our goal is to never send young people back to jail. And so we use every single option. We exhaust all of our options. We relentlessly engage to make sure that they stay on this side of the wall and never have to go back over there. So we're trying to do our part along with other organizations.
This is a text now question. As a member of the Cleveland City Council, what do you need from us to help with gun violence prevention? Given that we have allocated millions of dollars locally for this work, but the violence continues to increase, what can we do next?
Thank you, Councilman Richard Starr, for your question. Dang, you could have texted that to me. Okay. So I think the part, and I am grateful for the leadership of Chief Sonia Pryor-Jones with Cleveland Thrive and really supporting the allocation of the Neighborhood Safety Fund at $10 million. What I would say is that that is a great start. But when you have $10 million to live over the course of a certain time, I think we had 150 people apply for the, how many? So it was a $13 million request for organizations who believe that they could, in fact, reduce community violence. But there was a $1 million allocation. So when I talked about the competitive nature, is that everybody is fighting for a piece of this $1 million, and 29 organizations was funded. So if you see that you don't have a problem with people showing up and wanting to do the work, the problem is that the investment is not great enough. My answer to you is, if you know that you got $13 million in requests for people all over the city to be able to do the work, what would it look like to fund that request? $1 million a year will not be enough to meet the need of the growing numbers of homicides and non-fatal shootings in our city. And it doesn't just look like organizations like me, it looks like coaches and basketball players and pastors and teachers and mothers and fathers and council people and boys and girls. It takes all of us, so it goes back to the ecosystem. What I would need from you is like stand up and say, this is not just a police problem. This is a problem that community can and will tackle if invested and well-resourced. So, I'm good now.
Thank you to Myesha for joining us today at the City Club. Forums like this one are made possible thanks to the generous support from individuals like you. You can learn more about how to become a guardian of free speech at cityclub.org. Today's forum is a part of the City Club's Local Hero Series and with support from citizens, as well as our Criminal Justice Series in partnership with the Shar and Chuck Fowler Family Foundation. We would like to extend gratitude to each of these organizations for their support. We would also like to welcome our students for joining us from Shaker Heights High School, as well as students from Look Up to Cleveland. As well as guests at the tables hosted by the Shar and Chuck Fowler Family Foundation, Citizens Bake, and Legacy Empowered. We are off next Friday, July 5th for the holiday break, but we will be back on Wednesday, July 10th to kick off our free outdoor summer series with Rosemary Mudry, who will be joining us under the chandelier right across the street to talk about her new role and vision as the first executive director of the Cleveland Public Market Corporation, the new nonprofit arm of the West Side Market. Idea Stream's Mike McIntyre will moderate the conversation. Then on Friday, July 12th, Michael Jeans with Growth Ops will share his vision for a greener and more inclusive future after receiving a $156 million grant to ensure access to solar power for low-income communities across the Midwest. You can learn more about each of these forums and others at cityclub.org. And that brings us to the end of today's forum. Thank you once again to Myesha Watkins and our members and friends of the City Club. I'm Ariana Smith, and this forum is now adjourned.
For information on upcoming speakers or for podcasts of the City Club, go to cityclub.org.
Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream Public Media are made possible by PNC and the United Black Fund of Greater Cleveland, Incorporated.